Void Bastards! This was a game released last year that I somehow didn't notice, despite it being entirely my thing. This game was made by Manchu, a developer which supposedly have devs that worked on System Shock 2 and Bioshock, which are two of my favorite games. Void Bastards is a strategic first-person shooter. Their words, not mine. Regardless, hearing the word System Shock got me pumped, and seeing the quick gameplay trailer looking like a System Shock game made me pretty much just chuck it in the cart. After booting up the game, I was greeted by a comic book cover as the title screen, which honestly sets the game for the game style. It's a complete cartoon cel-shaded thick line comic book style, which honestly really suits it. Even the enemies are those old 2D sprites from like Doom and such, which really complements the game's style very much. There's a lot of nice little designs with this comic book aesthetic, like seeing sound effects of enemies behind doors or that satisfying when somebody triggers your mines. But how does the gameplay hold up? It's basically a roguelite. Let me put emphasis on light. Roguelite. Roguelite games are okay and all, but you know how I feel about them from my previous video. But roguelites, I can stop what I'm doing and take a break and not lose all my progress. And this game has a roughly 15-hour campaign. You're supposed to run around and loot derelicts in space. There's 3 types of items in the games that you want to be looking out for while you're looting. One I'll call the survivey bobs, like fuel, food, and currency. Fuel is so your ship can move in space. Food is so your character can eat and not lose HP from starvation. They also gain a little bit of HP back each rest every time you eat a sandwich or something. Then currency, which is called merits. It's used to override turrets, unlock locked doors, and similar things like that. Then you also have junk items. Junk items are what you'll mostly be picking up through a run. They're not useless, however. Most junk items are typically a scrap which have a value ranging between 1 and 50, which will give you a type of that scrap element like bio, plas, slag, volt, and so on. If you get enough scrap, you can craft what I'm going to call a completed junk item. A complete junk item is an item needed to construct an upgrade or item. You usually need like 1 to 3 of them. 1 on the lower tier, typically for starting off, then 2 or 3 for the more advanced upgrades. While looting on a derelict, you can also use your currency to open up locked chests to get you a completed junk item. It can be random, it can also be like a junk item you don't even need, but thankfully you can scrap those for materials that you can put towards things you do need. So this adds some incentive to save your currency. But what kind of upgrades will you be unlocking? The game has a pretty good array of weapons and gadgets that you can all put to use during your derelict raids. You have your passive upgrades that are always active, like finding more ammo, having more health, or damage resistances. Then you have your basic weapons like your pistol, shotgun, rocket launcher, charge laser, stuff like that. The primary damage dealers. Next up, you have what I would call indirect combat weapons. Here you have your silent poison darts, trip mines, stuff like that. Pretty much anything you can use to blow somebody up without getting directly in their face. Then you have a gadget. These are the unique things. Here you have a taser which can stun enemies and turrets, a kitty bot that will set off all the alarms, and a shield which can bounce projectiles and damage, for example. You can have 1 direct combat, indirect combat, and gadget each mission. Mission meaning every time you go raid a derelict. So this makes you look at the intel of what you're going to be going up against. There are some consistencies with each derelict you go on. Like all derelicts are going to have security measures, like turrets or cameras, and the cameras will summon a very deadly robot to come and kill you. Unfortunately, unless specified that security is disabled or allied with you, I feel you're somewhat forced to take the taser every time. Thankfully, they give that to you very early on. Another consistency is that all derelicts will have guaranteed rooms, like an FTL drive room with a guaranteed fuel can in it, then crew quarters or break rooms with food drops. So these are some target places you might want to consider hitting up during your run. I also think it's neat, however, that there are derelicts with their own specific sort of tile sets. Like the military derelicts will have a brig or weapon system rooms. corporate derelicts with big offices and paper processing rooms. Then you have luxury derelicts with slot machines, big dining halls, and I kind of wish I could go on a Starship cruise now. The unique thing is there are certain types of special items that you can get from these ships as well. Like the medical one has a unique healing station, which is something worth noting. The enemies during the game don't deal much damage, but they still do that wear and tear over time. And sometimes a simple sandwich isn't enough to restore that over time. So you can choose to tactically go to like a medical derelict if it's not going to kill you to do so. I once chose to go to a medical derelict that I kinda died during. Whoops, that made it entirely pointless. But there's a lot of little decisions you can make in this game. You have to carefully plot your route to avoid space whales and pirates, while also avoiding mines that might be on the map as well. Another decision is what weaponry you're going to have to bring based on what enemies will be on board. But I would like to shine some light on the unique enemies they got. They have some basic ones, the Jubes, Scribes, and Janitors. The Jubes are ones who are kind of fast, have a small hitbox, but they're always hurling insults at you. Then you have the Janitors, sort of slow walking and only get angry if they see you. The Scribes, which are kind of a hit and run type enemy. They're kind of a stressed out office worker, so I kind of see a bit of myself in there. Then you have the more unique enemies. Screws, which are slow lumbering hulks that you really don't want to take head on. They can take some serious damage, so be ready to dump some resources if you're going to try and take one out. Zeks, which are executives with a reflective shield. They have a pretty low health pool, but their front half is literally invulnerable because of that shield. So you'll definitely want to sneak up behind them to take them out, or have some well-placed explosives. Patients, which are a swarm of moving heads. Dear God, you're going to want to bring an explosive or rapid-fire weapon to take these out. Each head has a tiny hitbox. They're very difficult to take out, and they can swarm you into corners. And those are just some of the unique enemies that you'll go up against. At least that will require a more creative solution than stuffing them full of lead. So how's the story of this game? It's a bit lackluster and fairly simplistic. It pretty much just boils down to, oops, Murphy's Law exists, please go get some junk. And it can feel a bit disappointing. The game lasts around 10 to 15 hours before I completed everything. I enjoyed it overall, but I don't feel like I'll be coming back, despite there being a challenge mode. Though I would love another game in this universe with a similar gameplay and styling. Just maybe a bit less of a hit-and-run style kind of gameplay. I love raiding the derelicts and how hectic it can get sometimes. But after you get all the unlocks or what you want and need, the game kinda loses its replay value very quickly, unless you like a challenge mode. Ultimately, I feel that Void Bastards is a good game. There are some flaws in its long-term structure and replay value, but ultimately it was a good weekend of fun, quality FPS entertainment. The replayability is up to you, but I can still vouch that this game is a good time. Especially since the system's shock feel is quite rare to find these days. Anyway, I think that'll do it for this review. Hope you all enjoyed. If you liked, feel free to give me a like and maybe a compliment about what you did. If you disliked, feel free to dislike and give me some feedback about what I could do better. If you want more, feel free to subscribe and maybe follow me on Twitter for updates. My Twitter link is in the description below. This is Mr. Bubbles, signing out. Have a good one.